Veritas. SCP Files. Episode 46. Burial. Incident 7404-1. First and only known incident report related to SCP-7404, colloquially known as Nothing Gold Can Stay. Object Class: Neutralized. Risk Assessment Level: Unknown. Reported by Information and Technology Researcher Dr. Aidan Greenwell. Content initially written as a letter to Officer Niall Connors, and later identified as an incident report. Report made April 2nd, 2022. It has been months since we last spoke, my friend. I do apologize for that. The academic rigors of the Foundation have kept me quite busy. But know that you, and our last meeting, are often on my mind. Do you remember how eagerly you asked if I had an incident of my own to share with you? I fear I rather disappointed you with my answer. Working in IT provides a layer of separation from anomalies that many of our colleagues do not have the privilege to enjoy. But now, Niall, I believe my answer has changed. Please understand, I have not reported this to anyone yet. I am unsure if it even counts as an incident. Perhaps it is all in my mind. The Foundation is not particularly interested in dreams, especially when I have so little evidence to support my words. Still, I will tell you as much as I can. Perhaps you can reassure me that I am merely being paranoid, and that I can set this aside and return to normal. A few years ago, a new digital anomaly entered the Foundation's awareness. We designated it SCP-7404, an infovore, particularly voracious, capable of traversing both analog and electronic database systems. It had a distinct preference for our records, bypassing the vast ocean of more organic data on the open web in favor of consuming information that we had collected. Our first encounter with it was on February 13th, 2010, when it was discovered feasting on the backup archives of USNVBR Site-56. The warning signs were subtle at first, vast chunks of data mysteriously vanishing from our servers. But upon closer inspection, we realized the information hadn't merely been deleted, it had been devoured. The missing files left behind strange digital remnants, fragmented metadata that suggested something had actively consumed them rather than erased them. Access logs were corrupted in ways that defied explanation, with sections dissolving in a pattern disturbingly reminiscent of organic decay. And then, there was the image. SCP-7404 always left behind a mark. A crude, flickering sketch of a hellhound The form of the creature shifted between different artistic styles, sometimes an ink drawing, sometimes a quick outline, sometimes a distorted, pixelated figure on a corrupted screen. But its eyes never changed from those hollow voids, dark and endless, staring out at you through the screen. We tried to contain it, setting out elaborate traps using massive datasets filled with particularly enticing SCP records. But SCP-7404 was alive, clever, elusive, and impossibly fast. No matter how carefully we wove our digital cage, it always found the gaps, slipping through just as we thought we had it. We did manage to capture it, 6 times in fact. But each time it chewed, wheedled, and squirmed its way free, unraveling our code as though it were nothing more than a loose thread in a piece of forsaken clothing. We chased it for years. Months would pass, and we'd start to believe that we had finally rid ourselves of it, only for it to reappear, burrowing into another archive, gnawing away at our records. It was relentless, tireless, always hungry. Then, on January 4th, 2022, something happened that none of us expected. After all these years spent hunting it and others like it, tracing hard-to-pin-down fragments of anomalous code, chasing whispers of corruption in the data, this was the first time that an anomaly reached out to me. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw SCP-7404 in my Open Database tab, typing to me. For the first time, I wasn't hunting it. We were talking, and it wasn't running anymore. You see, SCP-7404 was different from the others. Unlike most digital anomalies, which exist in an endless static state, this one was aging, just as you or I do. Worse still, it was suffering from hemangiosarcoma, a cancer that attacks blood vessels, a common disease in canines. We had spent a collective decade chasing it, seeing it as nothing more than an invasive force, a predator feeding on our archives. But in that moment, I understood. It had only ever wanted to survive, and to survive, one must eat. It told me it had never meant to cause harm. It had simply done what it needed to do. But now, faced with its own mortality, it no longer wished to run. It didn't want to die alone, lost in the vast emptiness of cyberspace, isolated, forgotten. So it made a choice. It traded its freedom for comfort, care, and burial. We, of course, accepted the deal. And for the next month, I became its unlikely caretaker. We spoke daily. Such an odd thing to form a bond with an intangible being. It had no body, no form or substance, and yet cancer spread through it, creeping through its lack of blood and its hollow, false cells. It had no limbic system, no neurons to feel, and yet it confided in me a deep, creeping dread as it contemplated its mortality. It didn't want to die. It didn't know what awaited it, nor what version of an afterlife it clung to. Only that it hoped there was something, anything, for it to experience, rather than a cold, endless oblivion. It had no nerves of which to speak, yet it described in intricate detail a burning pain, deep, gnawing and relentless, coursing through its non-existent body as an unceasing itch, as the cancer marched unyielding through the veins it had never known. When it finally passed, on February 13th, I felt I had lost a dear friend. We honored its burial requests. We built it a grave, not in the physical world, but in the world it had known best. A file. It was a beautifully coated garden, lush with poppies, flowering cacti, fig trees, and lily of the Nile. We wove in the sound of honeybees, the soft melody of birdsong, the gentle rustling of leaves as butterflies drifted lazily through the air. A small pond sat below the trees, koi gliding beneath the water's surface, feeding on the tiny pond skaters that skimmed the ripples above. At the garden's center, we placed the mausoleum, locked, as requested, from within. Through the iron bars of its doors, one could peer inside and see the coffin SCP-7404 had chosen. Upon its lid, a stone facsimile of itself rested, curled in repose beside an unknown, peaceful man. And, as my digital friend had asked, we engraved a gentle Robert Frost poem upon the mausoleum's 4 faces. Nature's first green is gold, her hardest hue to hold. Her early leaf's a flower, but only so an hour. Then leaf subsides to leaf, so Eden sank to grief. So dawn goes down to day, nothing gold can stay. It was beautiful, Nile. The most peaceful place I had ever created. I only wished my friend could have been alive to enjoy it. To sit in the garden's stillness, to bask in the sunlight filtering through the fig trees. I often return to that moment, the first time I truly understood what it was doing when it reached out to me. Before then, I had only seen it as a monster, an entity ripping through our data in an insatiable, chaotic frenzy. A thing to be hunted, contained, controlled. But in that instant, I realized It wasn't driven by malice. It was only trying to survive. To treat it with dignity. To show it compassion rather than fear. It changed everything. It was a kind of beauty I hadn't known before. And I can't help but wonder, if we extended that same courtesy to every thinking SCP, how many would surrender peacefully? How many would stop running, stop fighting, if they were met with kindness instead of cages? What might happen to us, the Foundation, if we chose to be guardians rather than jailers? Of course, that way of thinking is not welcome here. My colleagues laughed me out of the office, told me I was getting too sentimental, too close. But you'd understand, wouldn't you, Niall? You see things others don't. These entities, they're alive. They're not so different from you or me. I kept going back to the garden, to its grave, again and again. I read the poem, let the hush of the place settle over me like a prayer. And then, somehow, I found myself there even as I slept. At first, I thought it was only a memory, my mind replaying those previous moments, keeping them close, keeping them sacred. But morning after morning, I woke smelling the lingering scent of fig and the faint echo of birdsong playing in my ears. The garden followed me. Or perhaps I had followed it, sought it out in my morning. Each night, I sat upon a stone bench beneath the shade of green leaves, the air warm and golden around me. I listened to the soft hum of the koi pond, to the wind stirring the lilies. And somewhere along the way, I lost track of something vital. Was I visiting the file? Or was I dreaming? One night, though I could not tell you whether I was dreaming, reading, or something in between, I noticed that something was off. The birdsong was not as sweet. The flowers, once vibrant, had begun to wilt. The koi's scales no longer shimmered in the sunlight. A chill crept through the once warm garden. The brisk breeze carried something new, something thin and hollow and wanting. And then I saw the mausoleum, and the iron gates were open. Not wide, mind you, not yawning, just a crack. A slight misalignment, just barely perceptible, but wrong in a way that I could not ignore. From the darkness within, a foul air blasted out at me, stale, cold. It blew back my hair, clinging to my skin like mildew, and forced its way into my mouth, slithering down into my lungs to fill me with an understanding far deeper than any words, any code could have conveyed. I knew, Niall. I knew they had not let it rest. Even awake, the wrongness clung to me, settling into every part of my life. The air felt too thin, too flat. The impossible weight of that open gate pressed down upon me, but I tried to push it from my mind as best I could and focus on my daily work. There was plenty to keep me distracted. We had been working to locate what we thought was a particularly insidious infovore, and it kept me exceedingly busy. During the day, I would scour our database for clues, hints of sabotage in order to track my quarry's movements. And by night I would dream. And in each dream, the crack in the mausoleum's door would grow wider and wider, until finally it yawned fully open. That morning, I found 7404's file had changed. The text had warped, mutating like diseased tissue. It had tripled in length, sentences looping endlessly or fracturing into unreadable fragments. Just looking at it, I felt as though the infovore's cancer was metastasizing, the corruption spreading bite by bite, devouring the file in awful, relentless waves. And that poem had changed too. Gold renewed, hollow, cold. Light proved far too bright to hold. The vivid bloom withers fast. Roots dark, sunken, choked by past. Then leaf forgetting leaf. Eden lost in shadowed grief. The dawn wrong, the day untrue. What was gold, we never knew. It seems that I was not simply crazy. The corruption spread far beyond this single anomaly's file, but that only left us with more questions. What were we supposed to do? It was dead, buried. No signs of life flickered from the file, yet the damage seeped from its every line, spreading like decay. And still, I dreamed. The garden's flowers had long since withered. The birds no longer sang. Or perhaps they had died, their fragile bodies buried in the soil. I wandered the stark and barren pathways, the blub of the koi pond gone. Only silence and the slow, fetid rot of the water remaining. The iron gates yawned wider now, and though I passed them over and over, I never once stepped inside, never once dared to look at what remained. Eventually, I did the only thing I could think to do. I tried to delete the file. I missed my friend, but the corruption, the dreams, it was too much. It didn't like that. That whole incident, the one where half of the files for the SCPs 7000 through 7500 were corrupted, entire anomalies wiped from our records, data blinking in and out of existence, that was all related. It's going to take us months to repair the damage. I don't have concrete proof of this next part, Niall. I can't tell you why I know what I know. But someone high up, far beyond my reach, chose not to let it rest. They couldn't just let 7404 die. They must have copied it, perhaps in its final moments, perhaps after its burial. Maybe they thought, it's already dead. What harm could it do? But 7404 wasn't just data. It was alive. It had thoughts, emotions, a sense of self. It cared how it was treated, how it would be remembered. And when they disturbed its grave, when they pulled it apart to study what should have been laid to rest, they left the door open. Something else crawled out. Maybe it was the cancer itself, the sickness that consumed my friend, now unbound, free to spread and fester in the very thing we rely on most, our precious database. And now, Niall, now I don't think we can stop it. The corruption will keep spreading. It will slip through cracks we don't even know exist. How long until it consumes everything? Can SCP-7404 be laid to rest again? Can we repair its grave, restore its file, give it back the peace it deserved? Or has that chance already passed? Anomalies don't forget, Niall. They don't forget when we break our promises. They don't forget betrayal. And they don't forget disrespect. And Niall, the way you act, the way you talk, I know you have power. I know you have influence, at the very least, over those who do have power. So I'm asking you, my friend, do something. This broken promise isn't just an insult. It's a threat to everything. Anomalies don't forget when we break our promises, Niall. The only question is, do we plan to keep this one? I checked the database before recording. There's no record of any of this. No evidence of a database-wide corruption event. No missing files between 7000 and 7500. No altered documents. No proof that SCP-7404 was ever anything but stable and contained, buried in its file. I even checked that file for myself. It's unchanged. Just as it was at Burial. Nothing strange, nothing wrong, no altered poem or spreading corruption. And yet, I know this report is true. I don't know how, but I can feel it. The weight of it lingers, pressing down on my mind, dreamlike, like a half-remembered nightmare. Maybe I wouldn't have believed it at all, thought I was just crazy. If not for one thing. Niall left this report for me. It was sitting on my desk this morning, with no explanation. It wasn't in my inbox. It isn't logged in the system. There's no record of it anywhere. Just a single, physical collection of papers, neatly stapled, waiting for me. Like something that wants to be remembered. Like something that refuses to stay buried.
Vault Veritas SCP Files is a podcast inspired by the SCP Foundation. Burial contains SCP-7404 by Uranium Empire from the SCP Wiki located at scp-wiki.com/SCP-7404. It is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution Share-alike 3.0 unported license. Nothing Gold Can Stay is a poem written by Robert Frost, 1923. This episode featured Justin Gellner as Scott Anderson. It was written and edited by Leola Angel. We welcome comments. Please rate and review us. Email us at vaultveritas@gmail.com. Join our Discord channel using the link in the episode description. Visit us at Blue Sky. Or for additional content, visit our Patreon. Thanks for listening.